Aloha, everybody. Happy Aloha Friday. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to give it just a couple more seconds to really open up the webinar to allow for folks to join the call. But thank you again for joining us today at Growing a Rainbow Sexual and Gender Minority 101. Righty, let's just get on started. All right, aloha and welcome everybody to the May Hawaii Public Health Training Hui webinar, Growing a Rainbow Sexual and Gender Minority 101. My name is Makamai Namahoe. I will be your facilitator for today's training. Before we get started and hand it over to our trainer, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping rules. Next slide, please. First, I want to mahalo the organizer of this training, myself. I have Melia Schneck, who is joining us as the new program assistant supporting the Public Health Training Hui, the Training Hui Steering Committee, as well as Mental Health America of Hawaii chapter. Next slide, please. First, want to give a shout out to our sponsors and partners. This program is approved by the National Association of Social Workers, the Hawaii chapter, the State of Hawaii Department of Health, Alcohol and Drug Abuse Division, the Commission on Dietetic Registration, and this is all put together through the Hawaii Public Health Training Hui. Next slide, please. And continuing on with our sponsors and partners, this webinar is approved and planned and implemented by the Western Public Health Training Center, and they are jointly accredited by the Accreditation Council for Continuing Medical Education, the Accreditation Council for Pharmacy Education, and the American Nurses Credentialing Center to provide continuing education for the healthcare team. Next slide, please. Few Zoom housekeeping, all participants are muted upon entry. For all the questions that you have for our speaker, please drop it into the chat box or the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. This meeting is being recorded and will be shared on the Hawaii Public Health Training Hui's YouTube channel, and those links will be emailed to you in a mahalo email shortly after this training has completed. Next slide. The continuing education credits that have been approved and provided for this training, we have CHES, registered dietitians, licensed social workers. Next slide, please. Substance abuse and prevention specialists, as well as CNE, so nursing credits. Thank you. Next slide, please. Here are how you can request the continuing education credits. First, you must register and attend the training. Melia will send you a webinar web link and mahalo email following this webinar. That email will contain the evaluations. Please make sure that you complete the evaluation to claim your credit. All certificates of attendance will be emailed out to folks by Friday, May 24th. Sorry, I didn't want to skip past this, but the evaluations are due by Wednesday, May 15th. So that's next week, Wednesday by 5 p.m. Hawaii time. For folks that are calling in, please email Melia at melia@hifi.org or publichealthhui@hifi.org with your name and phone number that you use today. That way we can make sure that you get a mahalo email shortly after this training. And for those that are missing any certificates, please make sure to email Melia 2 weeks after the training for an update on your certificate. Next slide, please. To finish, I want to give our speaker a brief introduction. Thank you to Amanda Martinez, who is the current training program manager for Mental Health America of Hawaii. Since 2017, she has trained thousands of youth and adults in Hawaii with Mental Health America's youth suicide and bullying prevention and mental wellness trainings. She is a certified trainer for mental health first aid and youth mental health first aid trainings. Amanda received her master's in public health degree from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, specializing in social and behavioral health sciences. She is interested in mental health wellness promotion among youth and young adults, especially among sexual and gender minorities. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Amanda.
Thank you, Mocha. Hello, everyone. She's back again. But thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to go through this presentation with you folks today. I know you just went through a little bit of housekeeping, but just in case you have not taken a training or presentation from myself, I like to keep the chat box open during the entire time, so feel free to drop any questions or comments. As we move through the slides, just in case you have any, I encourage interaction, and I do my best to try to work in a couple activities for this presentation as well, just to make it a little bit more impactful. But like you just heard, my name is Amanda Martinez. I'm the training program manager for Mental Health America of Hawaii. My pronouns are she, her. And the presentation I have for you folks is called our Sexual and Gender Minority kind of 101 from our Grow a Rainbow workshop. So a little bit of quick background for us as an organization, just in case you have not heard of us before. We are a nonprofit organization, and our goal is really to promote mental wellness through education, advocacy, service, and access to care. So education is really where I spend the most of my time, going as many places as I can to be able to provide information as well as resources statewide. So if you are interested in any of our other trainings outside of what we are offering through this series with Hi-Fi, please feel free to reach out. I pretty sure I have my email at some point on these slides, which you will also get copies of after today, including links to these recordings. So a little bit of what we're going to be learning today, the purpose is really to examine some of the realities, the risks and challenges for LGBTQ plus minorities. I usually put like a youth specific focus on a lot of our presentations just because that's typically where we go offer these presentations. So you'll kind of see that adjustment there, but really most of the strategies and supports that we go through can also be applied to adults as well. And then hopefully you all will be able to have a better understanding of the steps that we can take, both large and small, to put in place in order to be able to create safe, equal, and empowering spaces, right? Everywhere, whether it's at home, out in the community, at work, various organizations, wherever that may be. So we'll touch upon language because I think that's important. Words are powerful, so we need to be mindful of the language that we are utilizing. Statistics help to drive home the issue, right? Give us kind of a baseline or a landscape of why this is important. And then support, right? What are the ways that we can help support LGBTQ plus communities or sexual and gender minority communities? And if you know anything about us here at Mental Health America Hawaii, you know that we love our resources. So anytime we can share resources, we absolutely will. So we'll be able to identify a couple, right? Both local and national resources, some that are even specific to the LGBTQ plus community. Ground rules. Here are just some things for us to kind of keep in mind as we move through the material together. I just want to set us up to have a successful learning session all together. So participate and be present as much as we can. I know we wear many hats and sometimes we need to be accessible. So to the best of our ability, kind of put away distractions, be present, participate to your comfort level too. I got a couple activities that are not going to be super intensive, don't worry. But participate as you feel comfortable in doing. I think we learn better when we can participate and be present. Challenge by choice, kind of already mentioned this one. You know, sometimes people have very strong opinions and thoughts when it comes to sexual and gender minority communities. So challenge yourself by choice. There's always room to grow and to improve and opportunity to expand our thinking. So I encourage you folks to do that today. Listen, be curious, ask questions. There will be time at the end for questions to come up. But if there's anything I can answer kind of organically as we move through the material, go ahead and drop that in the chat and I'll do my best to be able to do that. And then tackle problems, not people, right? I think, you know, as long as we are able to create that kind of judgment-free zone, it really helps us to absorb this material and give us time and space to be able to reflect on how can I actually apply this to my life and how can I better myself, not just as a professional, but maybe how can I better myself in my personal life as well. So I want to do a little activity. It's going to be a bit modified, obviously, because we are in a webinar format. So obviously I cannot see you or hear you, but I want you folks, I'm going to invite you folks to participate via the chat. So to start us off, I want you all to write down. So whether you have like a pen and paper nearby, if you just have your phone, you want to take a quick note, or if you just want to kind of take time to reflect and think on the things, the places, and the people that are most important to you. Okay, so write down those top three: the people that you love, the places that you've been or that you like going, and the things that you like to do, like when you get together with your family or with your friends, or you know, you're taking a break with your coworkers. Like, what are the things that you typically talk about and bring up in conversation? So I'll give you a moment to Think about those top 3 things, people or places. And no one else is going to be seeing this list. It's only for you. So feel free to be as honest as possible. All right, so hopefully you all have at least a couple things written down. If you want to share them in chat, please, by all means, feel free to do that. But if you prefer to keep it a little private, that's totally fine as well. So now that we have these kinds of things written down or in our minds, without sharing, okay, what you've written down, I want you to tell me what you plan to do this weekend. So you can write it in the chat, or if you feel comfortable like talking verbally at me at the screen, even though I cannot hear you, go ahead. I'm going to set a timer for 30 seconds, and I want you all to try to tell me what you were doing this weekend without mentioning any of those things that you wrote down. So, trusted timer here. 30 seconds. And we'll go ahead and start. So you can tell me what you're doing this weekend without mentioning any of the things that you wrote down that are important to you. All right, I'm seeing a bunch of responses already. This is awesome. Okay, I see graduation, I see spring cleaning, Waikiki staycation, there we go, working, sewing, okay, laundry, sometimes we got those chores we got to get done. We've been putting off too long, right? I see going for a walk, love that. Going to dinner. Okay, working tomorrow, relaxing Sunday, like that. Dentist, yeah, sometimes we gotta take care of ourselves too. We go surf park, nice. Family time, gardening, chihuahua, playing cello, cleaning house. Okay, these are all great. All right, it looks like that 30 seconds is just about up. Thank you everyone for being able to participate in that. I got actually a lot more responses than I was anticipating, so which is great, right? But I do want to kind of ask, what was that like, right? What was it like to try to tell me what you were doing this weekend and not mention anything that you wrote on your list, right? Not mentioning the people that you love, the places that you've been or that you like going to, things that you enjoy doing or things that you talk about with your close friends and family. Okay, I see I had to omit so much. Yeah. And some of us may have slipped up a little bit, right? And actually sharing things that we like or people that we love. Any other thoughts on what that was like for you folks? Okay, see, difficult to exclude things. I love and enjoy for sure. Yeah. And maybe if you did mention some of the things or people on your list, like, why did you choose to mention them, even though I told you not to? Like, why would you put them down? Okay. I see. It took a lot of energy to not include the things on my list. Yeah, right. But we include them because they're things that are important to us, right? They're a part of us. They're kind of what make us us, right? They're things and people and places that we interact with on a regular basis. And so we want to share that, right, with other people, especially if someone's asking you, like, what are you doing this weekend? What's going on in your life, right? Give me an update. We want to talk about these things. So this activity, I think, is a really nice demonstration, even though we did it in a modified version. It's a really nice demonstration of the impact that silence has on LGBTQ plus communities. Like, can you imagine someone who maybe isn't out, right, or who isn't comfortable talking about like their partner or places that they go or things that they do because they're worried about discrimination, right, or harassment or being looked at differently? Could you imagine constantly every single conversation that you have or every time you're asked that question that you have to really sit and think like, okay, what is it that I'm mentioning? What am I withholding? Yeah, which could be exhausting. So thank you so much everyone for participating in that activity. I really appreciate it. And hopefully you get a little bit of takeaway with that and how, you know, we get a glimpse into what possible everyday experiences could be like for some folks. So let's take a look at some terminology. There are so many different kind of terms and definitions that are out there, so I won't spend too much time diving too deep into these. All of the definitions that I'll be showing in just a moment here come from GLSEN, so it's the Gay Lesbian Straight Education Network's Safe Space Kit. So they actually have an entire toolkit that you can download for free and get access to this kind of glossary of LGBTQ+ related terms. Just a few disclosures as we move forward with the material. You've already probably heard me do it a few times already, but I will use the terms sexual and gender minorities as well as LGBTQ+ interchangeably, but just know that I'm referring to the same communities, right? Because language is, you know, ever evolving. We hear both of those terminologies being used. So I will be jumping back and forth between those two. And I'm not an expert, even though I identify within the LGBTQ+ communities. I do not speak for everyone who identifies in the same way that I do, by any means whatsoever, but I'm hoping to give you just a little bit of baseline about all the different types of terminologies that may be out there, and there are certainly, certainly many, right? As you can see, this even is not a comprehensive list. Right? There are a lot of other identities that are out there, as well as individuals who do not want to be labeled at all or labeled by just one identity in a singular fashion. So our goal is not necessarily to memorize or to even have a complete understanding of all of this terminology here, right? And these are just even the ones that quote unquote, you know, are most common or the common terminology that we typically hear. And there's so many other ones that are out there. What I did want to highlight during our time together for this section is those differences between gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation, right? Because there are differences and we don't always think about, right, those nuances or what those differences could be, because sometimes we're so overwhelmed or we're so distracted by the vast amount of terms and terminology that are out there. So takeaway is to understand those differences. And so to help us get a better understanding, I would like to introduce you to our new friend, the Gender Unicorn. This was an activity document that was developed by a group of trans youth just to be able to help facilitate those discussions and those differences between gender identity expression, sex assigned at birth, and sexual orientation. So on the left-hand side, we have our new friend, the Gender Unicorn. On the right-hand side, we have different categories. Okay, so I'm actually going to start with the middle category, which is sex assigned at birth. So the little DNA molecule, right, on our unicorn friend. So a person's sex is what they were assigned at birth based on biological characteristics of maleness or femaleness. And those are usually determined by a whole variety of factors. It could be chromosomes, reproductive organs, external genitalia, hormones that are being produced in that person's body, whatever it may be. But essentially that doctor looked at the child and they made the determination whether that child was male, female, or other/intersex. Now, intersex, I think, is a term that not a whole lot of people are super familiar with. Maybe we've heard, you know, kind of it before, but we don't quite know exactly what it is. But it is a community within the LGBTQ+, you know, larger umbrella that usually isn't talked about a whole lot. So someone who is born intersex is someone who is not born with solely female characteristics or solely male characteristics, that there's some variation there. And that variation could be a whole bunch of different things, like I just mentioned, right? Chromosomes, hormones, genitalia, reproductive organs. Now, the amount of people who are born intersex in our society today is actually about the same as the amount of people who are born with red hair. So if you know someone, interact with someone, or have seen someone who has like naturally red hair, chances are you have also known, seen, or interacted with someone who is born intersex as well. Statistically, they're about the same in our society. So sex assigned at birth, right? DNA on a chromosomal level, right, is determined by that doctor when that child was born. The next category I'm going to jump to is the top, which is gender identity. So the little kind of rainbow thought cloud in our unicorn friend. And I'm not saying that someone's gender is only in their head. Okay, that's essentially just where it is housed, and we all have an inner sense of who we are. That's what gender identity is, right? Now, gender typically is a social construct and a social identity marked by a bunch of stuff, right? Attitudes, feelings, behaviors, culture, right? Um, Cultural, like, kind of viewpoints, what we associate with someone's biological sex. Gender identity is an aspect of gender that describes a person's psychological sense of who they are, right? That inner sense of who they are. And it may or may not align with someone's sex assigned at birth, right? So someone whose gender identity conforms to what has been culturally associated with the sex they were assigned at birth is often referred to as cisgender, right? So for example, I was born female and I identify as female, so I would consider myself cisgender. But some folks whose identities don't align, right? So maybe their inner sense of who they are, their gender identity does not align with their sex assigned at birth, may identify as trans or even non-binary, right? So someone who doesn't exclusively identify as either of the binary genders of male or female, okay? So gender identity, like I said, inner sense of who we are. Gender expression is also very similar to this. It's kind of how we express ourselves to the outside world, right? So pretty straightforward with that one. It's like our personality characteristics, how we dress, hairstyles, hobbies, interests, our likes and dislikes, all of those things is how we express ourselves. So sometimes there's even differences between gender identity and gender expression. So for example, maybe someone who identifies as trans, so their sex assigned at birth does not align with their inner sense of who they are, the gender identity, but they're not out, right? Or they have not begun their transition, whether that's socially, right, or medically. And so their expression, right, may not reflect the fact that they are trans. Yeah, so you can see how there could be so many nuances and differences, and we've only covered like 3 categories so far, right? I think gender expression is also where a lot of stereotypes and gender roles come out, okay? Um, and what society kind of tells us, right? How people should act, how people should dress, whatever it may be, based on their gender. Yeah. And so let's do a quick brainstorm. I just want to ask you, what are examples of some gender stereotypes that you've heard of before? These could be things that you've talked about just in everyday conversations. They could be things that you've seen in movies or television shows, even heard in music, right? In lyrics. What are some examples of gender stereotypes that are out there? We'll give you a moment to drop those in the chat. All right, I see tomboy. There we go. Yep, definitely heard that one before. Yeah. Okay, women are more emotional, men are more logical, men shouldn't cry, girls are more docile, use all boy. Okay. Yep. Definitely heard a lot of, and these don't necessarily have to be your own personal opinions, right? These are just things that we have heard before. These kinds of messages that are being talked about and spread in our society, that women wear skirts and dresses. Yes, men are supposed to be strong, women are weak, right? Men should be the breadwinners, taking care of the family. Men are physically stronger, right? Males wear quote unquote boy clothing like the color blue, girls wear dresses like the color pink, boys play with trucks, girls play with dolls, only women can wear makeup, men are better at math, throwing like a girl, absolutely. Woman barefoot in the kitchen, yeah, woman cook. You can see so many of these, right? And you all were super quick to throw all these stereotypes in there that women should stay home and care for the children. And so this just goes to show that these kinds of opinions, right, and these stereotypes and these gender roles are so ingrained in our society today that we're so able to quickly think about all of these and just list them in so many different categories, right? Colors. Boys are supposed to like blue, girls are supposed to like pink, right? And not deviate from any of those. It could have to do with how we express ourselves, right? I saw a couple comments that said boys are supposed to be strong, right? Supposed to not be emotional. They're not allowed to cry. There we go, right? Men are not supposed to show emotion, unless that emotion is anger, then for some reason that makes it okay, right? When it comes to anger and aggression, whereas women are supposed to be emotional and sensitive, right? And kind of be in touch with ourselves and be caregivers and be supporters, which translates into careers that we think, right? The stereotypes with that, okay? Where men typically go into things like labor-intensive jobs, like construction, right? Police, firefighters, or they're business owners, lawyers, doctors, whereas women staying at home, cleaning, cooking, maybe they become teachers, secretaries, nurses, right? And so, all of this just goes to say and to stress the fact that these things, these stereotypes and these gender roles are very ingrained in our society today. And we often see these come up when we talk about gender expression because it's typically what we observe, right? And how people express themselves. So thank you for that. Takeaway is that your gender should have no say over how we express ourselves, what we like, what we dislike, what kind of career we should be having, right? How we interact with our families, how we interact with the people that we have in our lives. So I challenge all of you, right? I challenge myself to even to expand our thinking beyond these stereotypes and beyond these gender roles, especially when it comes to our youth. They are being bombarded with messages like these growing up. So we want to help them to also expand their thinking beyond this and let them know that your gender has no say over any of that, right? Be yourself, okay? It's okay to be yourself. It's okay to express yourself. And I completely agree in the chat too that role categorizing is also cultural. So there are definitely some cultural aspects that we have to keep in mind even while we are educating ourselves and raising awareness and expanding our thinking beyond this. But it is possible, right? So the last couple categories to kind of wrap up the gender unicorn. I could spend all day talking about this if you if you couldn't tell already, but I do know we have an end goal, right, as far as time. The last couple categories essentially has to do with sexual orientation. Yeah, so sometimes broken down or typically broken down into physical attraction, emotional attraction, or even romantic attraction. Now, a lot of times when people talk about sexual orientation, their minds jump straight to sexual acts or sexual behaviors. But I want us to take a really big step back from that and think about what is attraction on its most basic level. So I want you all to think about the first time that you started dating your partner, right? If you're married, you have a spouse, you have a long-term partner, when you first started getting to know them, what was like? If you don't have a partner right now, think back to the first crush that you ever had, or maybe you have a current crush. What are some things that come up when you think about this person? And if you feel comfortable dropping them in the chat, go ahead. What is it like when you are around someone that you have a crush on? Okay, you feel emotionally connected. You might get some butterflies in your stomach. Yep. That happens for a lot of folks. Maybe some of us get a little nervous, right? To being around someone that we have a crush on, someone that we like. So maybe we start to sweat a little bit more, maybe we start blushing, right? Our body temperature just increases. We're like, oh, I don't know what to do with myself. Maybe we forget how to speak. Our words just come out right at random and we make no sense. Maybe we get excited to be around this person. Yeah, I look forward to spending time with them. Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be near you. I look forward to it. I get those butterflies in my stomach. My hands get a little sweaty, right? I'm nervous and excited at the same time. Maybe I'm staying quiet, right? I'm a little shy because I don't want to mess things up, right? I want to come off as cool to the person that I have a crush on. So maybe I'm a little bit more reserved with that. So all of these reactions are involuntary reactions that we have around someone that we are attracted to. Right? Involuntary is the key word there. So some people have those involuntary reactions towards the opposite sex, so heterosexual. Some people have those involuntary reactions toward the same sex, which we would identify as homosexual, so like gay or lesbian. Some people have those involuntary reactions towards many sexes, right? So bisexual, pansexual. Sometimes people don't have those involuntary reactions at all, right? So maybe they may identify as more aromantic or asexual. So tons of identities, obviously, that are out there. But really, attraction is that, right? Those involuntary responses, and people identify in different ways. And every single one of us will fall a little differently with this gender unicorn here. You don't have to be a part of the LGBTQ plus community to find your place in here. And this is a graphic that is easily downloadable. When I share the slides over to then be passed on to you folks, I'll make sure I include a PDF document of this, and you can take time to kind of reflect on that, or even do a little bit of a brainstorm with someone that you have in your life that maybe wants to learn a little bit more about those differences between gender identity expression and sexual orientations, because someone's gender identity expression does not have any say over their sexual orientation either. So thank you folks for participating in that little bit of a brainstorm. Really quickly, just go over some statistics. Like I said, it helps us to get a baseline, right? Take a look, a snapshot of the landscape. So the next couple slides are pulled from the Hawaii Sexual and Gender Minority Health Report, and then the subsequent report that came out focusing on trans youth here in Hawaii. They did just update these reports and these numbers. I just have not quite had a chance to also update these slides. But that data is now out there and is kind of being circulated in many groups. So if you're interested in taking a look at what those numbers are as far as statistics, let me know. I can give you access or send you over that report. For the sake of this presentation and the time frame that we have, I included a couple mental health statistics because that's usually the field that we work in, especially for the organization that I represent. So if you're interested in additional statistics, these reports include those, yeah. These reports are based on the minority stress model, which essentially means that although sexual and gender minority individuals typically experience greater disparities, so things like experiencing houselessness, substance use, isolation, depression, suicidality, etc., it's not the identity of being LGBTQ plus itself that is a risk factor. Just that there are systems in place in our society today that often make it harder for LGBTQ plus individuals to be healthy, right? So essentially the minority stress model. So from this report, some demographic information about 1 in 10 high school students identified as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or questioning. Of 4,700 high school youth identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or questioning, which is twice the sitting capacity of the Waikiki Shell, just to give us some perspective here. 1,260 high school students identified as trans. As far as adults, right, about 30,200 adults, which is about 3 times the capacity of the Stan Sheriff Center, and about 5,600 adults identified as trans or gender nonconforming. When it comes to mental health, we see those disparities represented even for our communities here in Hawaii, right? So we see higher experiences of depression. We see higher experiences of having poor mental health. We see feelings of sadness or hopelessness, so much so, right, that it was starting to impact their ability to get through their day for an extended period of time. We see self-harm, we see suicidality, so we see higher disparities, right? And even on a national level, about 40 to 50% of LGBTQ plus young people seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year. So the Trevor Project is the one who, on a national level, really does a lot of that important research. So if you're interested in those numbers, the Trevor Project is a really awesome resource for you to check out, and all of their reports they come out with every year, also reflecting these high rates of disparities. All right, so what, right? This is my so what side. So I obviously come from that public health background, so very much like, what's the data, what's the research saying, right? And then that question that we love to ask ourselves is that, so what? Now that we've done all the research, we've established that there is a need in our communities, what can we do about it, right? How can we help support? My little graphic, I forgot to click for you folks. So we can help to grow a rainbow. And if you haven't already noticed, right, Grow a Rainbow stands for these different strategies that we can utilize in a programmatic, interpersonal, and even organizational way, right? Yes, absolutely. I see that in chat. You will have access to these slides and a copy of the recording as well if you're a more audio visual learner. So if you have to leave early, I totally understand. But you will have access to all of this and my email just in case you have questions afterwards. But the first one we have is grow, right? So we want to give hope, emphasize strengths. Hope is so important. It's what keeps us moving forward. We want to help foster that hope without making promises that we cannot keep or offering like false reassurances. Yeah. So an example of this would be, someone saying, you'll be okay, right? Or your parents will be accepting. So, just come out, right? Just tell other people it'll be fine. We don't know those things for sure, right? We don't know that their family will be accepting. We don't know that they will be okay. It's really stressful, right? To be exploring your identity in that way, to, find a way that you feel comfortable identifying and then to share that with other people, right? There's a whole lot of things that come up, right, in the result of that process, and I'll touch a little bit on that coming out process in just a couple slides here, but we want to be able to give hope without making promises we can't keep or offering false reassurances like that. What we can say is that you're not alone, right? And worst case scenario, if that happens, if your family is not accepting, right? Or you find yourself struggling with your mental health because of everything that's going on, then let's figure out what we need to help support you. What does that look like for you, right? And who does that look like for you? And let's connect you to those resources. Safety is super important. If safety is ever an issue, that is always going to take priority. And some of you may even be mandated reporters because of the professional job that you have, right? Or the capacity that you work in within your organization, where you are legally obligated to report, especially a youth who is in danger of hurting themselves, hurting others, or if there's abuse that is happening. So just things to keep in mind, giving hope, emphasizing strengths, identifying those protective factors that are so important, in building resilience without crossing that line into making promises that we can't keep or those false reassurances. The R stands for rights, responsibilities, and setting ground rules for all meetings, classes, gatherings, or workshops. Yeah. So setting up learning agreements like we did at the beginning of today, right? I had that slide, right? Here are our parameters, here are our guidelines, and they are meant to help set us up and create a safe environment for us to interact, right? And to learn and to have a successful learning session together. It'll set up an environment that allows growth. It allows collaboration, right, in a safe way. The O stands for organize opportunities for connection, education, and advocacy. So an example of this could be organizing a team for the upcoming AIDS Walk Honolulu, right, being put on by the Hawai'i Health and Harm Reduction Center, right? So maybe you as an organization or you as a group of friends, maybe you can get together a team, do a little bit of fundraising, and then actually participate in the walk that's coming up. And I'm totally blanking on the date right now. I apologize. It's sometime in June, so I'll make sure I send that date over, or if anyone knows it in the chat. June 15th, thank you so much. Yes, June 15th is AIDS Walk in Honolulu, so organizing a team could be a strategy. And the W, welcome all youth, but really welcome all members of your workplace, organization, school, and community. Really goes a long way in creating those safe spaces. The A, kind of standalone, but it has a couple meanings here, right? So it means that we want to assess our own personal beliefs and assumptions, and sometimes ask difficult questions. And I think this is a really timely point, that a lot of people are and should be reflecting upon, giving the political climate of our country today. It starts with ourselves, right? Assessing our own beliefs, our own biases, our own assumptions, identifying sometimes hidden biases that are often learned early without us even realizing that we have those biases. Yeah. There's unconscious bias, right? So someone maybe who says something like, I'm okay with gay people as long as they don't wear it on their sleeve, right? As long as it's not being shoved in my face, I'm fine with it. Or how do you know that you're gay if you've never been with the opposite sex? Okay? How do you know that as an identity, right? So we can see how that unconscious bias or that hidden bias comes out, right? In not super obvious ways where it's outright like harassment, right? Or discrimination. But it's a little more kind of subtle. We want to expand our thinking beyond traditional gender roles and behaviors, educate ourselves about LGBTQ plus experiences, and that also includes histories and cultures and struggles that are often missing from history books, right? And lessons that we typically learn in general education. So sometimes we do have to make that little extra effort, take that extra step in educating ourselves in those experiences as well. Language is one of those things that is constantly changing. So it may seem overwhelming to keep up with constantly changing terminology, and that's okay. We're not expecting you to be completely up to date, right? In new terminology and know exactly what that term means. Yeah. Um, to be able to support another person, you don't necessarily have to know any of those things. Yeah. But just being open, right, to learning and adopting to that ever-changing language or new terminology that may be coming out, but also recognizing that you are human too. It's okay to mess up sometimes. And if we do mess up, we apologize quickly and sincerely, and then we move on. Again, you don't have to understand someone's gender identity or even their sexual orientation in order to respect them. And that's something that we all deserve on a basic level as human beings is respect. Okay, the rainbow is a little bit longer, yeah, but the R stands for research training opportunities for your youth, staff, board, and the community, your organizations. You're already doing this. Awesome news, yeah? You're already doing this simply by showing up today and being open to learning a little bit more and attending this webinar here. A is address exclusion, discrimination, and isolation immediately in the moment. We want to stand up, and I'll expand a little bit more on different ways that we can stand up, I think on the next slide, but we want to stand up to exclusion, to discrimination, and even isolation immediately, right? The I is to be inclusive when it comes to our language and pronouns in print and in conversation. So it's important that we make an effort to utilize correct pronouns according to that individual, okay? When they tell us, my name is blank, my pronouns are blank slash blank, okay? That we want to be respectful of that. Research actually shows that you can reduce suicidality by respecting someone's pronouns and utilizing someone's pronouns, right? Which is massive, and it seems like such a small thing for us to do, but it has such big implications, especially when it comes to suicidality for our youth. Just a quick kind of personal anecdote when it comes to pronouns, and it's something I typically share when I do presentations like this or have conversations like this, is that my grandma, love her to death, she constantly misgenders her dogs, no matter what dog she has, right? Male, female, she refers to the dog as the opposite gender, right? So her dog Coco, she'll be like, oh, Coco, she's hungry, she wants to go outside. And my entire family is like, no, grandma, or Coco is a boy, he is hungry, he wants to go outside. And it's always been like that. My family is so quick to correct her right away and then repeatedly try to correct her too. And it just dawned on me one day, like, why don't we do the same thing for human beings? Right? When someone is misgendering or not utilizing correct pronouns, why are we not jumping up, right? And correcting and be like, oh, actually pronouns are she, her, or he, his, or they, them. Yeah. So just a funny personal anecdote. Hopefully you got a little bit of a chuckle out of that one. But pronouns are incredibly important and we want to be respectful of those. And it's a strategy that we can utilize to create safe spaces and to offer support to someone else. We can set an example of this by sharing our own pronouns. So kind of like what I did when I introduced myself. My name is Amanda. My pronouns are she, her. So if we have a meeting, right? Or if you are introducing yourself to other people, it kind of sets the stage, right? You've already opened the door and it might make it more comfortable for other people to also share their pronouns too. And then we have a little bit more representation. The N stands for name and normalize identities, feelings, and experiences. So when it comes to anyone, really, we want to try to be as validating as possible, right? Exploring identity can be an uncomfortable and confusing process. And so we want to validate the emotions that may come up, things like confusion, worry, fear, loneliness, etc., and then get support if that's needed. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be something as simple as, it's natural for you to feel this way. It's okay that you're feeling confused and worried and fearful. but you're not alone, right? I respect you. My opinion of you has not changed. And if you need some extra support beyond what I'm able to provide, let's go figure out what that looks like for you, right? Because there's so many different kinds of resources that are out there. We want to listen and ask questions if they're open to having that conversation and sharing with us. Now, we're not forcing anyone to talk or to share aspects of their life or their identity with us if they don't feel comfortable in that. But if they're open to having that discussion, we can ask them, what does that mean to you? Especially if it's maybe a terminology or an identity that we're not super familiar with. Like, can you tell me what that means to you? Right? Help me understand a little bit more. And then also be respectful that, also just be okay that they're exploring their identity to begin with, right? Because it is a process, and they themselves, especially our youth, right, may not even know what a term or identity means, but we can support it in that journey, in that learning process. Maybe we could do a little bit of research together if you're comfortable. I just found out that there's a whole glossary of terminology from GLSEN. Maybe we could take a look at them together and see if it brings up anything for you, or maybe there is an identity out there that kind of speaks to you or something that you connect. The only person who can know their gender is themselves, so follow their lead, right? If you could take away anything from that little soapbox I was on for a moment, follow their lead, right? Ask questions to the other person's comfort level. We don't want to be pushy. We don't want to force anyone to talk or to open up. Someone's anatomy, right? Should it only be discussed if it's relevant to their treatment? So unless you are their doctor or actively involved in their medical treatment, try to stay away from asking questions, right, about anatomy. Be honest, be transparent. It's okay to admit that you don't know everything. We can't expect everyone to know everything all the time, all at once. Yeah. And so be honest about that, and always be open to learning more, right? Or if you don't feel comfortable in being open, right, to learning more or expanding your thinking, the very least you can do is be respectful. The B is build partnerships based on peer leadership and community collaborations. We want to work together to create safer spaces and safer communities in general. Because when there are safer spaces and safer communities, not just specifically for LGBTQ plus communities, but it's for the betterment of all of us, every single one of us. When we have safer spaces and safer communities, we thrive as a society. The O is to out yourself as an ally or an LGBTQ plus person if you feel comfortable. In doing so, representation matters, right? Hiring openly LGBTQ plus staff and allies, right? You can also show support and acceptance with visible representation. So a part of that safe space toolkit that I mentioned in the beginning from GLSEN, they all have safe space stickers that you can throw up on your office, magnets that you can put up on your filing cabinet, just to show other people that you are a safe space, right? For LGBTQ plus communities. And then right is the W, right policies, mission statements, goals, and objectives addressing safety and inclusion for everyone. Right? This obviously says youth, but for everyone. So utilizing neutral language in those written policies and mission statements and goals and objectives is being inclusive. Okay. So they, them instead of he or she, right? Based, our organization will not tolerate discrimination based off of gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, etc. Like actually naming those different categories. Because we learned that there are differences between all of those. So these are the kind of general programmatic, interpersonal, and organizational strategies that we can utilize as an individual or an organization and a community to help create safer spaces. And that's really what we mean by growing that rainbow. So to expand a little bit more on the importance of standing up and speaking up, this is, a strategy that we really stress in a lot of our bullying prevention presentations and conversations that we have surrounding that, but it's also applicable here, right? Standing up, don't ignore it, address it immediately, especially if you hear disrespectful language or terminology that isn't respectful to other people, okay? Address it, right? It's not okay to use that phrase, and we want to name the behavior, right? You may not have meant it to be hurtful, but when you use the word gay to mean something bad or stupid, it is hurtful, yeah? And then you don't know who could be around you that may be offended by the words and phrases that you are using. So we just want to be careful about that and really stress the importance of thinking before we say things like "that's so gay," right? Or utilizing language or using someone's identity to refer to something that we think is maybe uncool, right? Or is a bad thing. Because language is powerful, language is important. So it's an example of a way that we can stand up, and we want to be able to stand up and advocate. Because sometimes people aren't super great at advocating for themselves. Maybe they don't feel comfortable standing up for themselves. So it's something that we can do to help support each other as well. And then also reach out to that person and check in on them, even if they seem okay, right? We have those tough nutshells, right, on the outside. They're tough, right? They're like, oh, it's, water off a duck's back, right? It doesn't affect me. I'm fine. But on the inside, they're hurting. Yeah. So reaching out, checking in with them shows that you care. Yeah. Even if they seem okay, they'll remember you as being someone who checked in on them, right, and made sure that they were actually okay. Okay, resources. Like I said in the beginning, we love our resources, so let's identify some local and national ones that are available in our community. It's incredibly important, every single presentation we have, that we share crisis resources, that we want to let everyone know that these types of crisis resources are available 24/7. So Hawai'i Cares is kind of our local crisis line. It's available 24/7. We have that 832-3100 number. We also have that 1-800 number. They are also a great resource for anyone who's looking for mental health services or substance use services. And they're just looking to connect with those. They can absolutely call Hawai'i Cares, even if it's not a crisis, to connect to those. We have the National Suicide and Crisis Line, which is new. It just launched in the past couple of years here. It was formerly the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So that really long 1-800-273-TALK number, they just made it a lot easier for us by shortening it down to 988. Now, just a quick caveat, if you are calling 988 from an 808 area code, it's going to direct you to Hawai'i Cares because it's kind of our local crisis center. If I called 988 for my cell phone, my area code is 714, so I would probably be directed to someone in Southern California, but no matter where you're calling from, they are trained to direct you and connect you to those resources in your area. Okay? A 988, you can call, you can text. They have a chat feature, right, on their website as well. Even for folks who are deaf or hard of hearing, they have video chat services with interpreters. Right? So all of that. They also have a dedicated line, so you will get an automated message when you initially contacted them. It's like press 1 for your veteran. They now have a dedicated line that you can press if you identify as LGBTQ+, and so you can connect with a trained volunteer and support person who has a little bit more understanding of LGBTQ+ communities and how to offer support. And then, of course, we have the crisis text line for folks maybe who don't like talking on the phone. You can access supports via text. The Trevor Project, I've already mentioned them, is a really great resource. They have their own 24/7 helpline, right? That can be accessible any time of the day, any day of the week. They have their own chat feature. They even have their own text feature as well. It's really designed for LGBTQ+ youth, yeah. So if you have a youth in your life who may be questioning their identity, needing support, or identifies as a sexual and gender minority and needs support, this is a really great resource to be able to share with them. Other resources that are local, we have the Sexual and Gender Minority Resource Hub through the Department of Health, right? So you will get copies of all of these slides here, so you can just copy and paste these links. The Resource Hub is a really awesome way to check out different kind of providers who are doing like gender affirming surgeries, just finding out general information about sexual and gender minority communities. Pretty sure you can download the Gender Unicorn from this Resource Hub as well. So it's kind of wealth of resource and information. It's a good starting point. Through the Department of Health, we also have the Lavender Center and Clinic, so an all-inclusive medical practice for all communities, all genders, LGBTQIA+ friendly and supportive. And then the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center is also a really awesome resource. Fosters health and wellness, systemic change in Hawaii Pacific and the Pacific through care service, advocacy, training, prevention, education, and capacity building. And I'm just realizing now, I think I didn't update the slide because I'm like, the Lavender Clinic, I'm not sure if they're actually still open. So what I meant to put in this one, and I'll make sure I put it in the chat as well. Let's see if I can, or oh, maybe I can't for everyone to see, but what I meant to put as number 2 is Spill the Tea Cafe. So Spill the Tea Cafe is a really awesome space for LGBTQ plus youth. It is here on Oahu, but they offer a safe space for youth to go hang out, meet other people. They also offer an opportunity to connect with mental health services. So they can go and get counseling from, you know, professionals who have a better understanding of LGBTQ plus communities and being able to support those youth. So when I send these slides, I'll make sure I correct this. My apologies. Spill the Tea Cafe is really awesome. Yes, thank you, Maddie. They did close, so I meant to say Spill the Tea Cafe. I'll make sure I correct this when I send those slides out for you folks. Other resources that we offer through Mental Health America of Hawaii. Also Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center and their Ku'ana project. Really awesome resource for trans folks in our communities. So really awesome resource. Yeah, thank you for putting that link in the chat. There's tons of resources that are out there. I encourage you to kind of educate yourselves on what those are. And if you have questions about what they are, again, feel free to reach out to me after this. Other resources generally that we offer through Mental Health America of Hawaii, we have free online screening tests, so people can take screening tests for things like depression, anxiety, other mental health services, or mental health conditions. You get your results at the end, and it's not necessarily to diagnose ourselves. Yeah. So we're not going to take the depression screening, get our results, and say, I now have depression, right? Self-diagnosing is not the goal there, but it's another way to check in with ourselves. Maybe we could then take those resources over to our doctors or to a mental health professional to help them explain it a little bit more. Or maybe it's a way for us to realize that the symptoms that we're experiencing are actually having a bigger impact on our day-to-day than I'm even realizing. But it took me taking this screening test to actually find that out. They are anonymous, they are free, you could take them as many times as you'd like. We also have our No Shame Get Help campaign, which we launched a couple years ago. So really stressing that importance of reaching out for help, that we want to talk about mental health, even if it's awkward, even if it's uncomfortable, and that there's no shame and there's no, you know, weakness in asking for help or being open to connecting to supports and connecting to help. Yeah, I think the opposite of that is true. It actually takes a really strong person to admit that maybe this isn't something I can handle on my own, then I need some support surrounding this, because that's not an easy thing to do. Yeah, so we want to continue sending that message with this campaign and that there is no shame in getting that help. And then we have our YouTube channel where we house a lot of recordings of most of our other presentations that we offer through Mental Health America of Hawaii. So as we kind of wrap up, and I know we still have some time before, I want to do just a little activity before we open it up to Q&A. So call to action, right? I really want you to take time to reflect on what this is going to look like for you moving forward after today, right? So declare one action step that you will take after today to create safer, more equal and inclusive spaces. This says for LGBTQ plus youth, but for LGBTQ plus communities here in Hawaii. And if you feel like sharing what that call to action is going to look like or sound like or be like for you, feel free to drop that in the chat. It doesn't have to be anything grand. Yeah. It could be something as simple as, you know, I will be a better listener moving forward, a non-judgmental listener, because it actually takes work, right, to listen non-judgmentally and focused effort to be able to support someone. But listening is one of the biggest skills that we have to be able to support other people. So think about what that call to action is for yourself, right? What you plan to do moving forward. Here's all our socials, a QR code to those free online screening tools as well. As you can see, we're all over everywhere. Facebook, we got a couple groups that we run. We got a couple pages on Instagram, our YouTube channel, and TikTok as well. So before I totally open it up to Q&A, I do want to do just a quick, right, kind of let's practice what we've been learning so far. To see if we're able to absorb this information and kind of think through what are some ways I can actually help support. So I got a couple scenarios here. These are obviously like youth-focused scenarios because that's where we spend a lot of our time. But I want to get your thoughts on some of these. So the first one that we have, let's start with the top one, right? So in this scenario, this is a school staff member speaking to one of their coworkers, and they're saying, Did you know that Sarah is trans? I referred her to the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center. Do you know of any other referrals that might be useful? What do we think about this? Feel free to share in the chat. Do you think this is okay? Not okay? Is there a way that we can make this better? What do you think? Okay. I'm seeing some responses saying not okay, no, not okay, right? Not okay. Sarah might not have been out to that person. Yes. They could have left the individual's name out. Yes. Awesome. Okay. Great. Right. Awesome job. Right. So on the surface, I think this sounds pretty supportive. It kind of sounds okay. But in reality, there are some issues with this. Yeah. Because we don't want to use someone's name. We don't want to out someone because we don't know if they are actually out, right? In general, or we don't know if it's okay. There may even, yes, be some privacy issues by identifying the student because they're a youth, they are a minor, so they have certain protections, right? When it comes to their privacy and their identifiable information that we have to be aware of. So, you know, maybe we can adjust this a little bit, right? Maybe I have a student who identifies as trans. I gave them this resource. Do you have other referrals? And even that, right? Slightly better, but we're still auditing this person as trans. Yeah. So maybe we can generalize this even further and ask our coworker, hey, do you know of any local or national resources to help support trans youth? We're still reaching the same goal, right? We're still, you know, asking that question, what are some referrals? What are some resources that are out there that I can share without outing someone or identifying who they are? Yeah. Okay, awesome job. Number two, this is also another school staff member speaking to a coworker. Do you know that Mahu on my caseload? He/she can be such a drama queen and it can't even decide if it's Victoria or Victor. What do we think about this one? Okay, yeah, not okay. Using person's name. All capital letters, no. Yeah, not okay at all. Exclamation point. Definitely not okay. And I always get a little uncomfortable. I'm like cringing on the inside every single time I have to read the scenario out loud because it's very obviously not okay, right? Not respectful to be talking in this fashion. Yeah. We're outing, right? We're being disrespectful pronouns, calling, yeah, right, dehumanizing, right? Calling someone it is absolutely cringe. So obviously this is a very clear example of something that is not okay. Awesome job. Okay, last one. School supervisor speaking to a staff member. So David's husband's mom just died. I'd like to send around a card of condolences for everyone to sign. What do we think about this one? Okay. Is he a no? Is he not okay? Yeah, not okay. What do we think is problematic about this one? Seems like a nice thing for us to do, right? Then we want to send around a card for people to sign and offer their condolences. But yeah, there's also some privacy concerns in this one too. Um, do we know that it's okay with David that we are letting other people know, right? That David's mother-in-law passed, and that we want to make a card for David and David's husband? We don't know that, right? I mean, if we did, if David is very open, right, and talked a lot about their personal life, right, to other staff members and coworkers, so we had that knowledge, we had that type of relationship with David, yeah, I would say it's appropriate to maybe do that condolence card for everyone to sign. But if that wasn't the case, then yeah, want to stay away and be respectful of someone's privacy, even if we have good intention. So really awesome job. To be honest, I'm not surprised about any of this, right? Of you all being able to identify that these things and these scenarios have issues, right? But also that you're able to hopefully reflect and think of other approaches that you can take to make these better so that if you ever encounter a real life situation, you have some options available to you or you have an opportunity to stand up. yeah, and advocate. If you hear or encounter conversations like these out in the wild, right, or out in the community, that it's a opportunity to offer some education and awareness. Okay, awesome job. That's pretty much everything I have for you all content-wise. So I'd love to open it up to questions that you folks may have. I think in the Q&A and or chat. I'm not sure if there are ones that came in privately.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for that presentation. And just like I'm going to reiterate to what Amanda said, if you have any questions or any thoughts that kind of come out or had thoughts throughout your presentation, please drop them in the Q&A box or the chat box below. We did have a question come in quite in the beginning of your presentation, Amanda. Will there be new SGM reports forthcoming, perhaps with the emphasis on the needs of aging SGMs, including access to housing, care services, and community support?
I hope so, because I think that that data is important too. I know this is very kind of youth focused, but I really do hope that data is also being captured. So that data that we went over earlier in the presentation actually comes from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. It's a really big survey, goes out every couple of years. So it's, you know, they gather all of that data and then they kind of filter through to all those who identify as LGBTQ plus or sexual and gender minority. And then they do that analysis. So I know there's an adult version of this. It's called the Behavior Risk Survey, I think, or surveillance system. And so there's opportunity there, right, to also do the same kind of analysis and come out with those same reports. I'm not sure exactly what questions are being asked on that adult survey, though, because that's also important. The report itself comes out of the CDC, but each state is able to kind of modify it a little bit depending on the needs of their community. So they're able to, you know, ask specific questions, right? Even when it comes to demographics. So, you know, we'll have to check to see if those questions are even on the survey. And if they're not, that's step one, right? To advocate to get those questions on the survey. And then hopefully the Department of Health can also do similar reports for adults. I think it does have some adult information in those reports. I obviously just highlighted the youth ones in there, but they're really great reports you can look into to see what kind of disparities that adults, right, who identify as SGM are experiencing as well. Because I would agree there is actually a really great need for aging LGBTQ plus individuals to access supports, right, and to access resources surrounding all of those things like housing, care services, even just like social interactions. We hear that there are a lot more kind of older generations in Kupuna reporting higher experiences of just loneliness. Yeah, so not being able to interact with other people. So definitely an opportunity to get those that research and those reports out there so then we can identify strategies to also help support our older generations as well. That's a great question.
Thank you. Next question that came up, excuse me. How can you support Mahu with navigating their identity in the context of colonialism?
That's a good one. Yeah, and I'm not even sure if I'm like qualified to answer this question, to be completely honest with you. It's important to recognize the impact that colonialism, right, colonization has had on many communities, right, specifically here in Hawaii as well. So, you know, I can only offer the general kind of how do we support another person, right? Pretty much everything we went through in this presentation here, but there are, you know, resources out there, things that you can read, other folks who identify as trans and Mahu and who can, you know, share more cultural aspects of these identities and how ingrained it is and how, you know, it's supported in different cultures. And when, you know, colonialism and colonization came in, there was a big disruption in that, right? And suddenly it was something that was taboo, right? And should be stopped and looked down upon. So I encourage you to educate yourselves. And if anyone on the webinar now has these resources or starting points, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm always looking to expand and learn more, even myself. But I think that's a really important question to be asking. And they're important conversations to be having. And we want to have that representation on bigger platforms too, right? Not just, you know, in the specific webinar, but like in conferences, and everyday conversations and all of that, we want to be able to address cultural and historical trauma because it's had such a big impact on so many communities.
Thank you. And I kind of and agree too. And I think we still see those impacts in today daily, you know, and I think we see them in trends like we're talking about sports, we're talking about women's sports, we're talking about college sports, we're just like youth sports. There's just it's a conversation to be had, and I think you know people advocacy and education needs to be provided because we need to just make sure that we're staying up to times with what's reflective of our communities, as you say, like we want to make sure that those are in position the position of power and leadership are aware of all this information when they start to make policies and procedures. And I'm just thinking about it through the lens of sports, you know, and just that's just my other hat as being a college volleyball coach. But that's just I just wanted to piggyback on what you're saying. It's just all a matter of education and timely education, timely making sure that we're staying up to date with trends and stuff. No, excuse me. I had a question too, like, you know, in your opinion, and your experience, what would you say is the biggest risk that we need to be aware of for our youth that do LGBTQ, you know, or you know, SGM, and that for those that are on the call, like how do we make sure that we best prepare for those occasions, you know, and or even through adults. I mean, not just youth, but maybe you want to start with youth and then continue on through adults, and our aging kupuna population. What would you say you would say that are the risks and that what we want to make sure that we, as healthcare professionals are aware of, and we're constantly thinking of strategies and tools that support our communities?
A couple things come to mind. Obviously, we know that there are plenty of risks, right? There's a lot of disparities there. So, as healthcare professionals, doing what you can to be supportive, right? Even on an individual level, being respectful of pronouns, right? Supporting someone exploring their identity, offering healthcare in a way that isn't discriminatory based off someone's identity, yeah. And those things may be happening without you even realizing it. So, educating yourselves, right? And how to work with patients and clients who might identify as LGBTQ plus is a way that you can help, right, and kind of do better on that front. The other really big thing that comes to mind is policy. Yeah, given the political climate of our country today, it's a really scary time to see what's happening, right? As far as like laws that are being passed or like even being put up for discussion and for people to vote on. I know we live in Hawaii, which is, generally a more liberal type of community, more accepting. So we almost feel like we're in a little bit of a bubble here, but, there are implications that can spread far and wide and touch us even here in Hawaii when it comes to anti-trans policies, right? Same-sex marriages, right? All of that, what we're seeing today politically is a scary time. And so another way that we can help, at least on an individual level, is to advocate and to vote. Yeah, have these discussions. We want to do what's right for our communities, for everyone in our communities. And so standing up to this discrimination and harassment and these kind of anti-trans and anti-LGBT policies that are being presented in our country today, I think is really important for us to do, is to advocate, vote, and support.
Yep. Kudos. I agree. Yeah, I just wanted to read a comment that I saw drop in the chat. I had 2 trans patients moving to Texas and Virginia and are asking for extra medication because they fear that they will not be able to get hormones and access to care in those states. So sorry to hear that. Like that is a reality, unfortunately. And I think it's just so challenging for us as, you know, as providers and supporters to have to hear these stories and try to continue on the good fight. But I give kudos to everyone that are on the call that are allies and that, you know, we are doing amazing work. And the more that we can do to support, I believe is all we can do is help leverage voices and amplify those that are disproportionately impacted by these laws. I'm not going to continue. I'm not going to elaborate on what I think about these laws. I want to keep very neutral, but mentally, I'm rolling my eyes. As I just would like to point that out. Mentally, I've been rolling my eyes. Um, let's see, what else? Do I have anything in the chat? A couple thank yous, mahalos. I just want to make sure I check the Q&A. Make sure. Yeah, I mean, we still got 2 more minutes. I know we don't have to go all the way to the time. And so I know we've got a few more folks on the call, and we could also wrap this up pretty shortly. But maybe Amanda, if I can ask you to leave us with perhaps one or two lasting thoughts or key takeaways that you would want our participants to be aware of, and then I'll be happy to close out this webinar. And just want to hand it over to you. Just lasting thoughts.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I think if I could just say anything, it would be just thank all of you for being here today, for signing up for this, for showing up, for asking questions, for participating. This is obviously a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. Something I've always been passionate about, not just professionally, but personally too. So it always really warms my heart to see that people are willing to learn more and to educate themselves. Even if you know this information already, and you probably even know way more than I do, but being open to show up, yeah, and support the space and opportunities for these conversations to continue happening. Like from the bottom of my heart, personally and professionally, I thank every single one of you for all that you do. And all that you do to help support the patients and the people that you interact with in your life. It's important. You know, there are things that are for sure out of our control, right? There's only so much that we can do. So let's do the things that we can. Yeah, to do better, to be respectful, to offer that support, especially for LGBTQ plus community. So continue doing that great work, and reminder to also take care of yourselves too, especially in the healthcare field. We know that burnout is real, compassion fatigue is real. So in order for you to continue doing the really awesome work that you are doing, you have to take the time for yourself too, right? Find what fills your cup, find what recharges your batteries. What do you do for self-care? Because we need you. We need you to stick around and keep doing this. So practicing that self-care and taking time for yourself is not selfish by any means. It's something we all have to work together towards to create these safer communities and these safer spaces. So I encourage you to take this information out with you, do that call to action. If it's sharing information, if it's sharing resources, if it's just taking time to self-reflect, yeah, and kind of like explore, right, who you are and how you interact, right, in this world and in our communities. I encourage you to do that. Stay connected, reach out, right? If you have questions after today, sometimes if you're anything like me, I need time to digest and questions come up later, and then I'm in the shower later and I'm like, oh, I should have asked that question. So feel free to reach out. I'm just like one point of resource, but I'm part of a lot of like work groups. So the sexual and gender minority work group is an example of one. I can help connect you to those folks. They have a wealth of information and resources too. If you want to learn more, if you're looking for specific types of program services or resources. So just thank you. Keep doing that good work, and reminder to take care of yourself too, please.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. That was such a great monologue way to wrap up. I hate that I have to do the technical parts after this, but I just want to mahalo you for your knowledge and taking the time with our participants, and just want to echo all of the kudos that are in the chat box for you, that you're an amazing trainer. And like you said, please, folks that are on the call, reach out. She's an awesome resource to have, and she can connect you to other resources and continue this conversation, because we want to make sure that we take care of our clients and our patients and the populations that we serve. A few lasting reminders. This training was recorded and will be uploaded on the Hawaii Public Health Training Hui's YouTube channel. You can also find all of our previous training sessions there. To receive the continuing education credit for attending today's webinar, please complete the evaluation form that will be emailed to you after this training. The eval must be completed by end of business day on Wednesday, May 15th. And after completing your evaluation, certificates will be emailed to you by the end of business day, no later than Friday, May 24th. And as a reminder, if you do not receive your certificate after those 2 weeks, please reach out to us and we'll help you figure that out. We hope that you join us for another training session. Aloha to everybody. Take care of yourselves. Wish you a great weekend ahead. Great Mother's Day to those that we enjoy, our mothers or our stand-in adults that serve us in mother roles. And I wish you all well, and looking forward to see you all at a future training. Mahalo all.